يسرنا أن نرحب بكم مشاهدين قناة الرؤية تي في لقائنا الاستثنائي لهذا اليوم مع الفاضل مارك جي سيفرز سفير الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية المعتمد لدى السلطنة السابق، للحديث عن أبرز محطاته في صحبة جلالة السلطان قابوس بن سعيد طيب الله ثراه، بالإضافة إلى بعض الحديث والوقوف عن المحطات العمانية وأبرز آفاق التعاون والمحطات العمانية الأمريكية. مما يقدر بنا أن نذكره في هذا اللقاء طبعا بأن سلطنة عمان تعد من الدول الأبرز التي وثقت علاقاتها بالولايات المتحدة الأمريكية دبلوماسيا، ومن أوائل الدول في هذا المجال. قد يعود ذلك إلى زيارة السفينة سلطانة في زمن السيد سعيد بن سلطان إلى الولايات المتحدة، والتي رست في موانئ نيويورك في العام 1833 للميلاد. في هذا اليوم تصحبني الزميلة مدرين المكتومي في هذا اللقاء مع سعادة السفير مارك جي سيفرز، والذي سنتناول فيه بعض المحطات التي بقيت في ذاكرته من لقاءاته مع جلالة السلطان قابوس بن سعيد طيب الله ثراه. فإلى الحوار.
سعادتك، نحن في البداية راح نبدأ النقاش حول وجودك في عمان واختيارك لعمان لتكون المحطة التي تكون فيها بعد مسيرة حافلة من العمل الدبلوماسي.
شكرا. وأولا أريد أن أشكر جريدة الرؤية لهذه الفرصة. أنا سعيد جدا أن أجلس معكم وأتحدث عن بعض اللقاءات لي في جلالة السلطان المرحوم له السلطان قابوس بن سعيد. وأكيد هذا صحيح، اخترنا أن نبقى مدة معينة، لا أعرف حتى متى، في سلطنة عمان بعد التقاعد من الحياة الدبلوماسية، وهذا بسبب ارتياحنا في المجتمع العماني ومحبتنا لسلطنة عمان وشعبها.
Now, always we know that people, when they meet any people for first time, getting more impression about this meeting. Can you tell us little details about the first meeting with Sultan Qaboos? And your impression about this first meeting.
My first meeting with His Majesty was accompanying the former Secretary of State, John Kerry. I was actually nominated by President Obama and confirmed by the Senate in the Obama administration, and then asked to stay in my position by President Trump and his administration. So I bridged the two administrations. But my first meeting with His Majesty was with Secretary Kerry toward the end of the Obama administration. I believe it was just after the elections in the United States in November 2016. And as a newly arrived ambassador, I had not yet had the opportunity to present my credentials to His Majesty. So I wasn't officially recognized. I had presented a copy to His Excellency Yusuf bin Alawi, but not to His Majesty. So they included me as part of the delegation for Secretary Kerry, and we met His Majesty in the Beit al-Baraka Palace, and we had an excellent meeting and discussion, and then a dinner. And then at the end of it, when I said goodbye, His Majesty said to me, "I hope to see you again very soon." And I know that Secretary Kerry told him, "Please do receive my ambassador and let him present his credentials, because it's very important to me and to the United States to have an accredited ambassador in Oman." And so about a month later, in December, before Christmas 2016, I was notified by Royal Protocol that I would have an audience, and I was asked that I could bring 3 people with me, and who would I like to bring? So I immediately said I'll bring my wife, my deputy, who is also a woman, and my military attaché. And so the protocol came to me the day before and explained in detail exactly the ceremony and how this would be arranged and what time the car would come to take us. So the next day we drove to the Hosn al-Shumuch near Nizwa. And we stopped in a hotel and we rested and we had some lunch. And then we were invited to the palace. And there was a military guard of honor. And we recognized the guard of honor and then came inside. I had the original copy of my credentials, my letter of credence from President Obama, and the letter of resignation of my predecessor. And I walked in, His Majesty was waiting. I presented my credentials, I introduced my wife and my deputy and our military attaché, and then we were asked to sit for a few minutes. I sat with him and with His Excellency Yusuf bin Alawi and with His Excellency Sayyid Khalid al-Busaidi. And we talked, I think, for about 15 minutes. I talked to him about the Trump administration, which had just been... I was very excited. I was very excited. The palace is so amazing, it's so impressive, and the ceremony is very rich in tradition. You feel the sense of respect for tradition in Oman and the majesty of His Majesty personally is very, very strong. The head of protocol was there, the head of royal protocol. So it's a very impressive moment. But it was a good opportunity because President Trump had just been elected and had not yet taken office. So we had a chance to talk about what I expected would change in U.S. policy and what would be the same. And I think by and large I got that right. A little hard to predict these things. And then at the end they told me when the incense comes, that means you're finished. So they brought out the incense and we did the Bahor, and then we paid my respects and said goodbye. And then they bring you to the book, and there is a book for each ambassador, and there's a page for the American ambassadors, and I had my 5 predecessors, I think, on the same page, and you just sign on one line with the date and your name, and then that was it. And then we drove back to Muscat. But it was a very, very moving experience for me to, for the first time, officially be received and to know that I was officially the representative of my government and my country in Oman.
Mr. Ambassador, what you found, especially in Oman, you didn't find it in other country?
Oman is a fascinating mixture, and I think as Omanis maybe you take these things for granted, but certainly you're an Arab and a Muslim country, and you have many things in common with certainly your neighbors in the Gulf and other parts of the Arab world, where I have worked extensively. But Oman is also quite unique. You have the tradition of sailing, of commerce by sea, of connecting with other cultures and civilizations over many centuries, certainly with India, with Iran, but even farther with the Far East, with China, with Indonesia and Malaysia, and then as well along the coast of Africa. And you have the influence of the big Zanzibari community that left Zanzibar and then resettled here. You have the influence of different groups of Omanis, the Baluchis that came and settled here, and others, the Arab tribes, and all of these different elements mixed together to form the mosaic that is Omani society.
In same point, Ambassador, what's your opinion about Oman before you coming and when you coming? What you see? What the difference? Or your opinion before?
My opinion before, I had been here once for about 3 days, around, I think the year was maybe 99 or 2000. I was in our embassy in Riyadh, and I was invited by our ambassador here at the time to come for a conference. And I stayed at the Grand Hyatt, I remember. But I didn't really see very much. We went out for one day on a boat, and we saw dolphins, and we went swimming, and then we had the conference in the embassy. And so I had been here once, but that was my only direct experience. I had met some Omani diplomats in other countries in the region from time to time, but I really couldn't say that I knew the country other than what I read in books and articles. So having a personal experience is, of course, something very different. And here I'd like to thank Her Excellency Hunaina Al-Mugheri, your wonderful ambassador in Washington, who was sort of my first guide to Oman. And as soon as I was confirmed by the Senate, she came to my Senate hearing, and we met briefly. Until I was confirmed, I wasn't allowed to really talk to her. And then as soon as I was confirmed, she invited me to her embassy for a cup of coffee, and we talked. And then before we left, she invited my wife and me for dinner, and we met her family and had some time to get her wisdom, her advice on how to get started here. So I'm still very grateful for her graciousness.
Let us little to talk about the cooperation between Oman and America in different sectors.
Yes.
With Sultan Qaboos, economically, socially, also with cultures. How you see Sultan Qaboos' opinion about all this cooperation between us?
Yes, you know, Sultan Qaboos was very keen to have the best relationship that he could with the United States. And because, you know, we have elections every 4 years, and our presidents change, some of them serve 2 terms, 8 years, but no more than that. He knew every president since Gerald Ford. So going back to, I think his first visit was 1975, his first visit to Washington. And he had worked with each president that came after, and he knew, he understood that our country can change its leadership, and sometimes individuals make a big difference in the tone, but fundamentally our relations remain the same because of our strategic interest in this part of the world and our wonderful partnership with Oman. So these are things that were very important to him, I believe, and also to our administrations. In terms of areas of cooperation, they extend across the spectrum. We have a free trade agreement now for 10 years. The only other country in the Gulf that has a free trade agreement with the United States is Bahrain. It still needs to be developed further, but I think there's a lot of potential. Shortly before I was confirmed as ambassador, we signed a science and technology agreement as well. I think that has yet to be developed fully, but I think there's also a great deal of potential. While I was here as ambassador, and I believe one of my more important accomplishments here is that we completed a cooperation agreement called the Framework Agreement that gave the U.S. Navy more access to the ports of Duqm and Salalah, and the ability to store supplies and so forth, and use the maintenance facilities at Duqm in particular. And as you know, Duqm is one of the centers of Oman's economic plan for the future. It's a port city with great potential. that still needs to be developed further, but the port itself is very, very exceptional, and it's greatly appreciated by the Navy. What we want to see is American businesses follow after in the train of the Navy and the U.S. military, and develop our investment in the free zone in Duqm. I intend to work with on that as much as I can now that I'm retired as ambassador. We also have lots of cultural exchanges. We have exchange programs here through the embassy that are designed very carefully in cooperation with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to design programs that suit the needs of Omani society. We have another accomplishment. Last year we expanded the duration of visas on a reciprocal basis, and they're now 10 years for tourists and business people. Yes, and 5 years for officials. So that is a very, very good accomplishment, and I hope that it increases tourism and trade, which it's intended to do. We also have a growing number of Omani students studying in American universities, some on government scholarships, but some also paid for by their families. The number grows every year. They are very welcome in the United States. I think the ones that I've talked to have had wonderful experiences. I know sometimes their parents worry about sending them so far away from home, but they tend to go to universities that already have other Omani students, and so they have a cultural network that helps them. And also the Omani Embassy in Washington has an officer who takes care of the students if they have any needs.
Yeah. Mr. Ambassador, I will back to communication between you and His Majesty. It was only by direct meeting, or there is other diplomatic channel?
Oh, there are many diplomatic channels, but most of His Majesty's communications with the United States during the period that I was ambassador were through either personal meetings with senior U.S. officials, and this after Secretary Kerry, we had a visit of Secretary Mattis, who was the Defense Secretary at the time, and then a little over a year ago, Secretary Pompeo, the Secretary of State, was here also on a visit. I attended both of those meetings. And occasionally, when there was something to follow up on, we would coordinate telephone conversations with His Majesty. Not very often, but a few times.
But what about the next meeting with Sultan Qaboos? Of course, you have another meeting after this first meeting. What about the next meeting, and how?
Well, again, the meetings were mostly with visiting senior officials. And then at the end of my diplomatic tour, actually, I was asked if I wanted to stay, if my family and I would like to remain in Oman. And we thought about it for a long time, and we said yes. And so I wrote to His Majesty and asked for permission to stay for 2 or 3 years. I got a message back delivered to me orally, not in writing, but from His Majesty, saying we were welcome to stay as long as we would like, which was very, very nice. So when I was leaving as ambassador, the protocol asked me would I like to have a farewell call with His Majesty, and I said of course I would. Of course I would like a farewell call with His Majesty. And so they sent the appointment, and it was the end, about 5 days before the National Day parade, so in November, and 2 weeks before I retired as ambassador. And it was also in Beit al-Baraka. I was asked to come to the palace and then to wait. And then I was told that there was also a Council of Ministers meeting. So the ministers were there. I had the chance to talk to a few of them while I was waiting, and we all waited. I think there were some newly appointed ministers that needed to swear an oath in front of him. So they did that, and then they asked me to come forward, and he received me. Again, Minister His Excellency Yusuf bin Alawi joined us, and we sat, and he told me, I told him, I thanked him for his permission to stay in Oman. He asked me what I was planning to do, and I described some of the things that I'm trying or planning to do, and he was very pleased, and he said, "Oh, that's very good." And then we talked about some of the issues that we worked on, relations with countries in the region and so forth, and there had been a number of important visits just before that. I think the brother of the Saudi Crown Prince had just been here, and we talked about his visit and about Yemen and these issues. And then he said goodbye.
Also, Mr. Mark, we want to ask you about the most challenge for us in Oman now, how we continue the peace, which
Yes.
is Sultan Qaboos work hardly to make it peace with Oman and all relation with other countries. But in your opinion, how we can continue with peace now with all these obstacles in all the regions?
Peace is always a challenge. This is a region, as you know better than I, full of conflicts and difficulties. But I think Oman's role is greatly appreciated in the United States, but all around the world. You are a country that values dialogue and believes in listening to the opinions of others, and that's a very valuable contribution. I think Oman will continue to play that role under Sultan Haitham, just as it did under Sultan Qaboos. Oman.
I remember now one important thing.
Please.
One tweet for John Kerry he say in this tweet, we learning from Sultan Qaboos, and he getting many information about thinking of Sultan Qaboos, about his advice.
Yes.
Yeah, he do many things in this tweet. Your comment about that?
Let me say also, I think Secretary Pompeo felt the same way. In any meeting that I attended with His Majesty, his immense knowledge of the personalities, the history, the different political parties and tribes, and all of these elements throughout the region, he shared them. And he would talk about, this leader and that leader, and how he knew them from different times, and what he thought about their views. And on Yemen, for instance, he was a great expert. He knew all of the tribes and different movements and different leaders going back for a long period of time. And we're a big country with many global responsibilities. Sometimes we don't quite understand all of these details. So hearing this kind of description from His Majesty was very, very valuable to any American that came to see.
Between America, Yemen, and Iran.
He-
Tell us a little about that.
Well, with Yemen, as you say, Oman's policy has been to try to bring the war to an end. I do think that slowly things are moving in that direction. I hope they will move more quickly. There are still some issues that need to be resolved, but I think Oman's contribution has been extremely important. With Iran, if I may say, this was I didn't come to talk about politics, but this was the biggest challenge I had here as ambassador, was managing the change in our policy, because from President Obama to President Trump, the policy toward Iran changed quite significantly. But I think the good thing was I was able to keep my Omani friends informed as the U.S. policy was changing. And so when we withdrew from the JCPOA and reimposed sanctions, I don't think it was a surprise. So, but yes.
Finally, what is the planning to spend your time in Oman?
Oh, well, I'm doing a number of different things. So I'm hoping to bring business and investment. I'm also occasionally going to write some blogs and things for the Atlantic Council and maybe help organize some conferences and things like that. And mostly just I'm enjoying my life, and I have more time to spend with my son. We have parent-teacher conferences this afternoon at the American school, and it's very important to my wife and me. So all of those things.
شكرا سعادة السفير على وجودك معنا هنا في الرؤية تي في، وأيضا نشكر الزميلة فايزة الكلباني على الحوار، ونتمنى إن شاء الله نقابلك في لقاءات أخرى وتكون معنا أيضا ضمن المشاركين في عدد من المنتديات والفعاليات اللي نقيمها.
شكرا جزيلا، وأتمنى نفس الشيء.